The Horde Overmind floated in its massive organic chamber, connected to 1,000 nerve cables that carried information from across the galaxy. For 3,000 years, it had directed the conquest of countless worlds. For 3,000 years, victory had been certain. Now, for the first time, it felt something new, something its species had never experienced before. Fear. The neural reports flooding its consciousness painted a picture of disaster. 17 systems lost, 43 supply worlds under attack, command structures collapsing, and everywhere the same enemy: humans. The Overmind tried to understand how such a primitive species could threaten its empire. The humans had inferior technology, smaller numbers, and no natural advantages. By all logic, they should have been consumed weeks ago, but logic did not explain why Horde warriors were deserting. Logic did not explain why battle-hardened commanders were refusing orders to engage human forces. Logic did not explain why an empire that had conquered half the galaxy was now in full retreat. The answer came from War Master Keth Tar, one of the few Horde commanders to survive a direct engagement with human forces. "They do not fight like any species we have encountered," Keth Tar reported, his mental voice shaking. "They do not seek to capture territory or claim resources. They hunt us." "Explain," the Overmind commanded. "On Vega Prime, we captured their supply depot. Instead of retreating, they followed us. For 6 days, they stalked us through the canyons. They did not attack directly. They picked off stragglers, sabotaged our equipment, poisoned our water supplies. By the 7th day, my warriors were jumping at shadows." The Overmind processed this information. "You allowed primitives to intimidate superior Horde warriors?" "Overmind? They are not like us. When we lose a battle, we regroup and attack again. When they lose a battle, they become angry. Angry humans are different." Commander Jihai crouched in the ruins of what had once been a Horde supply depot on Kepler 442b. Around her, Task Force Vengeance moved through the wreckage like ghosts, collecting intelligence and planting explosives. The name was not chosen randomly. Task Force Vengeance had been created with one purpose: to make the Horde pay for every world they had destroyed. Jihai's soldiers were all volunteers, and they all had personal reasons for being there. "Ma'am," whispered Sergeant Bach, "thermal scans show enemy forces moving in from the north. Looks like a full battalion." Jihai checked her tactical display. The Horde was bringing overwhelming force to retake this depot. They expected a traditional battle where superior numbers would guarantee victory. They were about to learn another human concept: the strategic retreat. "All units. This is Venom Actual." Jihai spoke quietly into her radio. "Execute Phase 2. Remember, we're not here to hold ground. We're here to hurt them." The human forces melted away into the landscape just minutes before the Horde battalion arrived. The aliens found an empty depot and assumed they had won an easy victory. Then the explosions started. Every piece of equipment the humans had touched was rigged to explode. Supply containers detonated when moved. Communication arrays burst into flames when activated. Even the food supplies were poisoned. But the real surprise came 3 days later, when the Horde tried to use the depot as a forward base. Human snipers began picking off sentries. Saboteurs destroyed vehicles in the night. Psychological warfare specialists broadcast sounds of dying Horde warriors through hidden speakers. Within a week, the battalion had abandoned the depot and retreated to their home system. They left behind more than half their equipment and a third of their personnel. Corporal Kyung-soo had been behind enemy lines for 26 days. His reconnaissance team had been cut off during a failed assault on the Horde mining world of Titan 7, but instead of trying to escape, they had gone deeper into enemy territory. "Control. This is Ghost 7, Kyung-soo whispered into his long-range communicator. "I have eyes on the primary target. Confirm mission parameters." The voice that answered came from Admiral Dong-hyun himself, broadcasting from the flagship Resolute 3 systems away. "Ghost 7, you are authorized to gather intelligence only. Do not engage. Do not reveal your position. Observe and report." Kyung-soo looked through his scope at the massive complex spread out below. This was one of the Horde's breeding facilities, where new warriors were created in vast organic chambers. Intelligence suggested that destroying just one of these facilities would cripple Horde military production for months. "Control? I count 17 breeding chambers and approximately 3,000 guard units. Facility appears to be lightly defended. They don't expect an attack this deep in their territory." "Acknowledged, Ghost 7. maintain observation and wait for extraction. But Kyung-soo was not thinking about extraction. He was thinking about the 47 worlds the Horde had destroyed. He was thinking about the billions of innocent people who had died. He was thinking about revenge. Control. Ghost 7 requesting permission to engage target. Negative, Ghost 7. You are outnumbered 3,000 to 1. Maintain your position. Kyung-soo looked at his teammates. Privates Choi and Nam nodded back at him. They were all thinking the same thing. Sorry, Control. Signal breaking up. Unable to comply, Master Sergeant Yoonji had turned demolition into an art form. Over the past month, she had destroyed 43 Horde facilities across 7 systems. But her mission on Proxima 12 was different. This time, she was not just destroying a target. She was sending a message. The Horde breeding facility on Proxima 12 was one of their most important production centers. It created 10,000 new warriors every month and was protected by an entire army division. Yoonji's team consisted of 12 soldiers and enough explosives to level a city. They did not attack the facility directly. Instead, they spent 2 weeks studying Horde behavior patterns, learning how the guards moved when shift changes occurred, where the security gaps were. Then they struck. The attack began at dawn with a series of small explosions around the facility's perimeter. Nothing dangerous, just enough to get attention. The Horde guards rushed to investigate, leaving their posts unmanned for exactly 47 seconds. That was enough time for Hunji's team to slip inside and plant their main charges. But the real psychological warfare began after the facility was destroyed. Yoonji had programmed the explosions to occur in a specific pattern, creating a message visible from orbit. When Horde reinforcements arrived, they found their breeding facility had been turned into a giant crater shaped like a human skull. The message was clear. Humans could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the Horde could do to stop them. Word of the breeding facility attack spread through Horde space like a plague. Suddenly, installations that had been secure for centuries were requesting additional guards. Commanders were afraid to leave their bases. Warriors were deserting rather than face the possibility of encountering human forces. The psychological impact was devastating. The Horde had built their empire on the idea that they were the galaxy's ultimate predators. Now they were learning what it felt like to be prey. Ambassador Tae-min reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing amazement. In 3 months, human forces have destroyed 40% of Horde military production. Their recruitment has dropped by 60%. Entire sectors are requesting to surrender rather than fight. General Minho studied the tactical displays showing Horde positions across the galaxy. Red enemy markers were disappearing faster than they could be updated. They made one mistake, Minho said quietly. What mistake? They hurt innocent people. Humans can forgive a lot of things, but we never forgive that. Now they've learned the difference between conquest and extermination. Taemin looked confused. I do not understand the difference. Minho turned to face the alien ambassador. His expression was cold as space. Conquest is about taking territory. Extermination is about removing threats. The Horde thought they were conquerors. They were wrong. They are a threat to innocent life, and humans eliminate threats. Across the galaxy, the Horde was beginning to understand this distinction. They had started a war of conquest and found themselves fighting a war of extermination. They had awakened something in humanity that they did not know how to fight. They had awakened the persistence predator that lived in every human heart. And once awakened, it would never stop hunting. Admiral Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of the Earth starship Resolute, watching 12 human warships move through space like a pack of hunting wolves. 3 weeks had passed since first contact. Earth's response had been swift and decisive. The Terran Expeditionary Fleet was not the largest force humanity had ever assembled, but it was the most experienced. Each ship carried battle-hardened soldiers who had fought in the Mars colonies, the Jupiter mining conflicts, and the brutal asteroid wars. These were not peacekeepers or explorers. These were warriors. Admiral, called out Communications Officer Park, we're receiving a transmission from the Valari homeworld. They sound desperate. Dong-hyun nodded. Put it through. Ambassador Taemin appeared on the main screen. His blue skin was even paler than before, and his large eyes were wide with fear. Admiral Dong-hyun, thank the stars you have arrived. The Horde scouts reached our outer system 2 hours ago. Our defense fleet is trying to slow them down, but they are too strong. How much time do we have? Donghyun asked. 6 hours, maybe less, Taemin replied. They will reach our homeworld by then. 40 billion people live on our planet, Admiral. We cannot evacuate them all. Donghyun looked at his tactical display. Red dots showed enemy positions moving steadily toward the blue dot that represented the Valari homeworld. The numbers were not good. The Horde had 30 ships to their 12. We will not let your people die, Donghyun said. Prepare your population for ground combat. My soldiers will handle the rest. Colonel Yujin stood in the transport bay of her ship, the Iron Fox, addressing her ground troops. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and scars on her hands from a dozen battles. Her soldiers called her the Iron Fox because she was clever and impossible to catch. Listen up, Yujin said to the 500 soldiers packed into the bay. The aliens think we're here to help them fight. They're wrong. We're here to win this war. The soldiers laughed grimly. They knew their colonel's reputation. She had never lost a battle, never left a soldier behind, and never shown mercy to an enemy. The Horde has been destroying worlds for centuries, Yujin continued. They think they know how to fight. They're about to learn the difference between conquest and war. Major Hyunwoo stood near the back of the group with his ghost battalion. These were Earth's most elite soldiers, trained for missions that officially did not exist. They wore black armor with no markings and carried weapons that most people had never seen. Major, Yujin called out. Your boys ready for this? Hyunwoo nodded once. His soldiers were silent, but their eyes were bright with anticipation. They had trained their entire lives for a war like this. The first contact with the enemy happened in the asteroid belt around the Valari system. Captain Dayun led a squadron of 12 Earth fighters against 40 Horde attack craft. The aliens expected an easy victory. They were very wrong. Ghost leader to all units, Dawn spoke into her helmet radio. Remember, they're big and strong, but they're stupid. Use that. The Horde ships were massive things, covered in spikes and armor plating. They moved in straight lines like battering rams, trying to smash through everything in their path. Dayun had seen the tactical reports. The Horde always fought the same way, but humans had spent centuries learning to fight smarter enemies. They knew how to use speed and cunning instead of brute force. Break and attack, Dayun ordered. The human fighters scattered like startled birds, then curved back in from different angles. The Horde ships tried to follow, but they were too slow to keep up with the human ships' wild maneuvers. Dayun dove under a massive Horde battleship and fired her missiles directly into its engine ports. The alien ship shuddered and began to spin out of control. Around her, other human pilots found weak points the Horde had never bothered to protect. In 15 minutes, 26 Horde ships were destroyed or disabled. The humans lost one fighter. The real test came when the Horde reached the Valari homeworld. As expected, they landed ground forces at 6 different points and began marching toward the population centers. The Valari defense forces tried to stop them but were quickly overwhelmed. Then the humans arrived. Private Subin was 19 years old and had been in the military for only 2 years. She found herself alone at Hill 247, watching a column of 50 Horde warriors marching up the slope toward her position. Each alien was twice her size, covered in natural armor. With 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws, any sane person would have run. Subin set up her rifle and began to pick her targets. The first Horde warrior fell with a bullet through its head. The second one dropped when Subin's shot found a gap in its armor. The third one stumbled when she hit its leg, and the fourth one died when she put 3 rounds into its chest. The aliens began to charge up the hill. Subin switched to her grenade launcher and started dropping explosive shells into their ranks. Bodies flew through the air. The survivors kept coming. When they got within 50 meters, Subin activated the mines she had planted during the night. The hillside erupted in fire and smoke. More aliens died. When they got within 20 meters, Subin drew her pistol and kept shooting. She was not afraid. She was angry. These creatures had come to kill innocent people, and she would not let that happen. By the time Sergeant J. Ho arrived with reinforcements, Subin had killed 37 Horde warriors by herself. The remaining 13 were retreating down the hill. How? J. Ho asked, staring at the bodies scattered across the slope. Subin reloaded her rifle. They're big and scary, but they're not very smart. They just charge straight ahead. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Sergeant Minho held a bridge against 200 enemies using nothing but machine guns and explosives placed in exactly the right spots. Lieutenant Hana turned an abandoned factory into a death trap, leading 50 aliens through a maze of corridors lined with automated weapons. The Horde had conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics. They would land, overwhelm the defenders with superior numbers, and consume everything in their path. It had worked perfectly for centuries, but the humans did not fight like other species. They did not form neat battle lines or follow predictable strategies. They appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the enemy could react. They turned every building into a fortress and every street into an ambush point. Most importantly, they did not give up. When a position became hopeless, other species would surrender. Humans would fight harder. By the end of the first day, the Horde had lost 60% of their ground forces. The survivors were no longer advancing. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were retreating. Ambassador Taemin watched the battle reports in amazement. "How is this possible?" he asked Admiral Donghyun. "They outnumbered your forces 3-1. Donghyun smiled grimly. "Numbers do not win battles, will does. And humans have more will than you can imagine." The Horde was learning something new. They were learning what it felt like to be prey. General Minho stood in the command center on Keth Prime, the fortress world that guarded the inner systems of the Galactic Council. 2 months had passed since the victory at the Valari homeworld. The aliens had given Earth this strategic position to coordinate the war effort. Thinking humans would use it like any civilized species, they were wrong about that too. "Sir," called out Intelligence Officer Lee, "the Horde fleet is massing at Zerion Station. Looks like they're planning another major assault." Minho studied the tactical display. 300 enemy ships were gathering at the edge of Council space. It was the largest Horde fleet anyone had ever seen. "Good," Minho said quietly. "Let them come." Captain Daeun had been promoted after her victory in the asteroid belt. Now she commanded an entire wing of fighters, but she still flew her own ship into battle. Today she was testing a new concept that the aliens found disturbing: tower control. "This is Viper 1 requesting permission for close air support mission," she spoke into her radio. "Viper 1, you are cleared for approach. Be advised, friendly forces are danger close to target area." Daeun smiled inside her helmet. Danger close was a human military term that meant friendly troops were so near the target that any mistake could kill them. Most species would never risk such an attack. Humans had been doing it for centuries. Below on the planet's surface, Sergeant J-Ho crouched in a shell crater with his squad. Enemy forces surrounded them on 3 sides. Traditional military doctrine said they should retreat. "Viper 1, this is Ground Team Alpha," J-Ho spoke into his radio. "We need fire support on grid reference 447295. Enemy forces are 30 meters from our position." "Ground Team Alpha, confirm 30 meters? That's very close." "Confirmed, Viper 1. We trust you." Those 3 words changed everything. Daeun dove her fighter toward the surface at full speed. Her targeting computer screamed warnings about the proximity of friendly forces, but she ignored them. Instead, she relied on something no computer could replicate: years of training and absolute trust in her fellow soldiers. Her missiles struck the enemy position with surgical precision. The explosion was so close that J-Ho felt the heat on his face, but not one piece of shrapnel touched his squad. "Target eliminated," Daeun reported. "Ground Team Alpha, you are clear to advance." The aliens watching this battle were shocked. They had never seen such precise coordination between air and ground forces. They had never imagined that soldiers would trust each other enough to call in strikes so close to their own positions. Engineer Specialist Wu Jin was having the time of his life. The Galactic Council had given humans access to their advanced technology, expecting them to use it the same way everyone else did. Instead, Wu Jin was applying human military engineering principles to alien equipment. "These energy shields are impressive," he told his team, "but they're designed to stop direct attacks. What if we don't attack directly?" He had spent weeks studying how the other species built their defenses. They created strong walls and powerful weapons, then waited for the enemy to attack. It was predictable and efficient. It was also boring. Wu Jin's new design looked like a normal defensive position from the outside. But hidden beneath the ground were tunnels, sensors, and automated weapon systems. When enemies attacked the obvious targets, they walked into carefully prepared kill zones. "It's not enough to stop the enemy," Wu Jin explained to his Valari assistants. "We need to make them come to us, make them fight on our terms." The aliens looked confused. "But why not simply build stronger walls?" Wu Jin grinned. Because walls just sit there. This defense fights back. Lieutenant Colonel Sung Ho was planning something that had never been attempted in galactic warfare. He called it Operation Hammerstrike, and it involved coordinating 5 different types of military units in a single attack. The enemy expects us to attack their strongest point, he explained to his assembled commanders. Instead, we're going to attack all of their points at the same time. The plan was complex beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Ground forces would assault the enemy base while fighter squadrons provided air support. At the same time, orbital weapons would bombard key targets. Electronic warfare specialists would disrupt enemy communications, and special forces teams would sabotage supply lines. Most species could barely coordinate 2 types of units. Sung Ho was coordinating 5. "Sir?" asked Major Hyunwoo. "What if something goes wrong? This plan has a lot of moving parts." Sung Ho looked at his tactical display. "Then we adapt. That's what humans do." When the attack began, everything went wrong at once. Enemy reinforcements arrived early. Weather conditions grounded half the air support. Communication systems failed in 3 sectors. Any other species would have called off the attack. Instead, Sung Ho turned problems into opportunities. When reinforcements arrived early, he redirected his reserve forces to ambush them. When weather grounded his fighters, he used orbital bombardment to clear landing zones. When communications failed, his units operated independently, each commander making decisions based on local conditions. The Horde had never faced an enemy that could adapt so quickly. Their rigid command structure could not cope with human flexibility. When their battle plans failed, they had no backup options. The attack succeeded beyond all expectations. Not only did the humans capture their target, they destroyed 3 enemy supply depots and eliminated an entire Horde command center. The victory at Keth Prime changed how the galaxy thought about warfare. For thousands of years, military doctrine had been simple. Build big armies, attack enemy strong points, accept heavy casualties to achieve objectives. Humans showed them a different way. They showed them that intelligence could defeat strength, that flexibility could overcome rigid planning, that trust between soldiers was more valuable than any weapon. Ambassador Taemin visited the Human Command Center after the battle. He found General Minho studying reports from across the front lines. "Your species continues to amaze us," Taemin said. "The Horde has been unstoppable for centuries. Now they are retreating on 17 different fronts." Minho looked up from his reports. "They're not retreating because we're stronger. They're retreating because we fight differently." "How do you mean?" "The Horde fights to conquer. They expect their enemies to fight the same way. But we don't fight to conquer worlds or capture resources. We fight to protect people. That makes us unpredictable." Taemin thought about this. What happens when the war is over? Will humans continue to be unpredictable? Minho smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Ambassador, the war is not over. We've barely started fighting." Across the galaxy, Horde commanders were learning the truth of those words. Human forces had spread to 50 systems, and everywhere they went, they left chaos in their wake. Supply lines that had been secure for decades were now under constant attack. Worlds that had surrendered without a fight were suddenly full of resistance fighters using human tactics. Most disturbing of all, the Horde was losing soldiers to something they had never experienced before: fear. Warriors that had fought for centuries without hesitation were now reluctant to engage human forces. The humans had introduced a new concept to galactic warfare. They had shown the Horde what it felt like to be hunted by something more dangerous than themselves. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Horde was afraid. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such fear. Ambassador Taemin stood at the center of the massive chamber, his blue skin pale with worry. Around him, representatives from dozens of alien species whispered in their own languages. All of them were scared. The holographic display showed the same terrible image over and over. Red dots moved across star maps like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. Each red dot was a world that no longer existed. Each red dot had once been home to billions of living beings. The Horde was coming. "Honored council members," Taemin said, his voice shaking. "The Horde has destroyed 47 worlds in the past 6 months. My people, the Valari, will be next. Then they will come for all of you." Counselor Sora, an elegant woman with silver scales covering her arms, leaned forward in her floating chair. "What do you want us to do, Taemin?" "We have tried everything. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. They are too many, too strong, too hungry. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. The Horde was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not interested in talking or making deals. They did not want territory or resources. They wanted everything dead. Taman pulled up another image. This one showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. There is one option we have not tried, he said quietly. The chamber exploded with noise. Alien voices rose in confusion and anger. That primitive world? Shouted Counselor Vexka, his forearms waving wildly. Those barely evolved apes? They have not even mastered faster-than-light travel. Sora raised her hand for silence. Explain yourself, Taman. Why would we contact such a backward species? Taman activated his personal data pad. Information flowed across the main display. Earth, third planet from their sun. Population 8 billion humans. They have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. So have many species, interrupted another counselor. What makes them special? They fight differently, Taman said. Our intelligence reports show that they do not just fight for food or territory. They fight for ideas. They fight for things that do not even exist except in their minds. The images on the display changed. Humans in metal suits fighting other humans. Humans charging across open ground into enemy fire. Humans dying for flags and symbols and words. Look at this, Taman continued. They have a concept called sacrifice. They will die to protect others they do not even know. They have another concept called revenge. They will hunt their enemies across entire continents for decades. Counselor Vexka laughed, a harsh sound. Primitive emotions. Civilized species do not behave this way. Perhaps, said Taman, but civilized species are losing to the Horde. Maybe we need something uncivilized. Sora studied the data more carefully. Their technology is crude. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are basic chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Yes, Taman agreed. But look at how they use them. They have been fighting each other for thousands of years. They know every possible way to kill and destroy. They study war like we study art. The display showed human history. Battles fought with sticks and stones. Battles fought with swords and spears. Battles fought with guns and bombs. Always, humans found new ways to fight and kill. They even fight their own planet, Taman said. They hunt creatures much larger and stronger than themselves. For food, yes, but also for sport. They are persistence predators. They never stop chasing once they start hunting. An old counselor named Rihan spoke for the first time. He was ancient even by galactic standards, and his voice was like rustling leaves. I remember the old stories. Before we had the council, before we had peace, some species were different, dangerous in ways we have forgotten. You think these humans are dangerous? Sora asked. I think, Rihan said slowly, that anything capable of surviving on a death world like Earth, of creating weapons capable of destroying their own planet, of fighting endless wars against their own kind. Yes, that is dangerous. The question is whether we want that danger pointed at the Horde instead of us. The chamber fell quiet again. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The Horde was already pointed at them, and their civilized weapons were not enough. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Captain Jinwoo sat in his command chair aboard the space station Luna base. He was reviewing supply reports when his communications officer called out. Captain, we're receiving a transmission on the emergency first contact frequency. Jinwoo looked up from his datapad. Earth had established first contact protocols decades ago, but they had never been used. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared, blue-skinned with large dark eyes. The creature looked exhausted and frightened. Greetings from the Galactic Council, the alien said in broken but understandable English. I am Ambassador Taman of the Valari people. We have an emergency. Jinwoo leaned forward. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for since they first looked up at the stars. This is Captain Jinwoo of the Terran Defense Corps. What is the nature of your emergency? We need soldiers, Taman said simply. We are facing an enemy that will destroy all life in this galaxy unless they are stopped. We offer technology and resources in exchange for military assistance. Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew had stopped their work to listen. They all knew what this meant. How many soldiers do you need? Jinwoo asked. As many as you can send, Taman replied. This enemy has destroyed 47 worlds. They do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They only consume and destroy. Jinwoo looked at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Hairi. She was young but brilliant, and he valued her opinion. She gave him a small nod. Ambassador Taemin, Jinwoo said, humanity accepts your request for military assistance. We will need detailed information about this enemy and the current tactical situation. Thank you, Taemin said, and Jinwoo could hear the relief in his voice. I will transmit all available data immediately. As the transmission ended, Jinwoo turned to his communications officer. Contact Earth Defense Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we have first contact and they want our military. Yes, sir, the officer replied, already working at his console. Jinwoo looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy was destroying entire worlds. They had asked the galaxy's most peaceful species for help against monsters. They were about to learn that Earth's idea of help was very different from what they expected. Humanity was going to war. Fleet Admiral Yoon Seo stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Vengeance, watching the final approach to the Horde Prime system. Behind her, the combined fleets of humanity and the Galactic Council moved through space in perfect formation. 300 ships from a dozen species, all following human battle plans. 6 months had passed since the war began. The Horde Empire, which had once controlled half the galaxy, now consisted of a single star system. Their last stronghold, their final refuge. Admiral, reported Navigation Officer Kim, long-range sensors are detecting massive defensive installations around the primary world. The enemy has concentrated everything they have left. Yoon Seo studied the tactical display. 3 orbital defense platforms, each the size of a small moon. Thousands of automated weapon systems. Energy barriers that could stop entire fleets. The Horde had turned their homeworld into the most heavily defended position in galactic history. How many ships are defending the system? Yoon Seo asked. Over 800, Admiral. They outnumber us nearly 3 to 1. Any reasonable commander would have called for reinforcements. Any sane person would have prepared for a siege lasting months or years. The Horde defenses were designed to be impregnable. But Admiral Yoon Seo was human, and humans had their own ideas about impossible odds. Signal all ships, she commanded. We attack in 1 hour. Captain Seok Jin checked his assault rifle one final time as his transport ship approached the Horde flagship. Around him, 200 of Earth's finest Marines prepared for the most dangerous mission in human military history. The plan was insane by any rational standard. While the fleet engaged the Horde defense platforms, Seok Jin's Marines would board the enemy command ship and fight their way to the bridge. The ship was designed like a living organism, with twisted corridors and chambers meant to drive invaders insane with fear. The Horde had used this tactic successfully for centuries. No species had ever managed to capture one of their command vessels. Listen up, Marines, Seok Jin said over the comm system. The enemy thinks their ship is scary because it looks like the inside of a monster. They forget that humans used to hunt monsters for breakfast. The Marines laughed grimly. They had all seen the intelligence reports about Horde ship design. Organic walls that bled when damaged. Corridors that changed shape to confuse invaders. Chambers filled with toxic gases and hostile creatures. Remember your training, Seok Jin continued. We are not here to capture territory. We are here to end this war. No matter what horrors they show us, no matter how many of them there are, we do not stop until we reach their command center. The boarding pods launched from their transport ship like bullets fired from a gun. Horde defensive systems tried to shoot them down, but human pilots had learned to fly in patterns that confused alien targeting computers. Seok Jin felt his pod crash through the enemy ship's hull. Emergency lighting flickered on, showing a corridor that looked like the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed with organic rhythms. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. The air smelled of death and decay. Welcome to hell, Marines, Seok Jin said as his troops formed up behind him. Let's show them who the real monsters are. The battle for the Horde Prime system lasted 18 hours. Human tactics had evolved far beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of attacking the strongest defenses directly, Admiral Yoon Seo used a strategy that no other species would have attempted. She divided her fleet into 50 small groups and attacked from 50 different directions at once. The Horde defense systems were designed to stop massive frontal assaults. They could not cope with dozens of small attacks happening simultaneously across their entire perimeter. When they tried to concentrate their defenses, human forces would strike from a different angle. Captain Da-un led her fighter squadron through the gap between two defense platforms, dodging energy beams that could have vaporized her ship in an instant. Her target was a communication relay that coordinated the entire Horde defense network. "This is Viper 1 to all fighters," she announced. "Remember, we only get one chance at this. Make it count." The relay was protected by automated weapons and force fields, but Da-un had studied the technical specifications for weeks. She knew exactly where to hit it. Her missiles struck the relay's power core with surgical precision. The explosion cascaded through the entire network, leaving the Horde defenses blind and uncoordinated. Meanwhile, inside the enemy flagship, Captain Seok Jin and his Marines were fighting through corridors designed to break the human spirit. The ship's biological systems released fear-inducing chemicals into the air. Holographic projections showed horrifying images of death and torture. The walls themselves tried to grab and crush the invading soldiers, but the Horde had made a fundamental mistake. They assumed that humans would react to fear the same way other species did. They assumed that showing humans horrible things would make them weak. Instead, it made them angry. "Section leaders, sound off," Seokjin called over his radio as his forces reached the ship's central hub. "Section 1, 12 casualties but still advancing. Section 2, heavy resistance but we're pushing through. Section 3, we've reached the engine room. Planting charges now." Seokjin smiled grimly. The Horde ship was massive, but his Marines were taking it apart piece by piece. Every chamber they captured became a strong point. Every corridor they cleared became a supply route. The real breakthrough came when Private Ju Hyun discovered something unexpected in one of the ship's data storage areas. "Captain, you need to see this," she called over the radio. "I've found intelligence on Horde breeding programs, military production, even their command structure. Everything we need to end this war permanently. But the most important discovery was something else entirely. The location of the Horde Queen. The Queen of the Horde had ruled her species for over 5,000 years. She was ancient beyond measure, intelligent beyond comprehension, and absolutely convinced of her superiority over all other life forms. She sat in her throne room at the heart of the flagship, surrounded by her most elite guards, watching reports of the battle with growing disbelief. Impossible. These primitive mammals should have been crushed hours ago. Their technology was inferior, their numbers were smaller, their experience was limited. By every logical measure, they should have lost. Instead, they were winning. The throne room doors exploded inward. Captain Seok-jin stepped through the smoke and debris, his armor scorched and his rifle ready. Behind him came his surviving Marines, their faces hard with determination. The Queen's guards rushed forward to protect their leader. They were each 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, and armed with weapons that could cut through steel. The Marines cut them down in seconds. "Surrender," Seok-jin said simply, pointing his rifle at the Queen's massive head. For 5,000 years, no one had dared speak to the Horde Queen with anything but absolute respect. For 5,000 years, she had been the most feared creature in the galaxy. Now she was looking at something more frightening than herself. "This is impossible," she whispered. "You are primitives. You are barely evolved apes. You cannot defeat the Horde." "We already have," Seok-jin replied. "Your fleets are destroyed. Your worlds are liberated. Your empire is finished. The only question now is whether you surrender or join your warriors in death." The Queen looked into the human captain's eyes and saw something that made her ancient blood run cold. She saw the absolute certainty of a predator that had cornered its prey. For the first time in her long life, the Queen of the Horde felt genuine terror. "I surrender," she whispered. The war ended not with a massive battle, but with those 2 words. Across the galaxy, Horde forces laid down their weapons when they heard that their queen had surrendered to humans. Ambassador Taiman found Admiral Yoon Seo in her quarters, 3 days after the victory. The human commander was staring out the viewport at the stars, her expression thoughtful. "The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to offer Earth full membership," Taiman said. "We also want to share our most advanced technology with your species." "That's generous," Yoon Seo replied. "What's the catch?" Taiman was quiet for a moment. "There is no catch. We are grateful for what you have done, but we are also concerned." "About what?" "About what we have learned about humanity. You do not fight wars to conquer territory or claim resources. You fight wars to completely destroy your enemies. That is a frightening concept for peaceful species." Yoon Seo turned to face the alien ambassador. We didn't ask for this war, Taemin. You came to us, remember? You asked us to fight monsters and we showed you how it's done. Yes, but now the monsters are gone. What happens next? Admiral Yunseo looked back out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were already being planned. Human explorers were mapping new trade routes. Human scientists were studying alien technology. What happens next, she said quietly, is that humanity takes its place in the galaxy. We'll explore new worlds, make new friends, build new civilizations. But we'll also remember this war. We'll remember that when innocent people called for help, Earth answered. Taemin nodded slowly. And if someone threatens innocent people again,